Evening and welcome to our second training session. If you joined us for the first session, you know that Teresa Brandon provided a terrific overview of the elements of a successful campaign. If you missed it, you can watch it on the district's YouTube webpage, In4Blue Pod. This week, we'll be discussing two of the most important but often overlooked roles in a campaign, field director and volunteer coordinator. While the candidate and campaign manager receive the lion's share of attention, and rightfully so, it is the field director and volunteer coordinator who provide a campaign with the planning and ability to execute the campaign's vision. To begin tonight's presentation, I'm going to hand things over to Keith Ribnick. Keith is a longtime Democrat who has professionally hosted numerous webinars and is a valued member of the 4th District team. Keith?
Thank you, Matt, and good evening, everyone. A couple of quick announcements before we begin. If anyone has questions this evening, you can use the Q&A feature, and we will answer the questions after the presentation. This will allow us to both get through the presentation quickly and answer more questions. Next, I want to let you know that we will be sending out resources from tonight's presentation via email on Tuesday. So be on the lookout for that. And then finally, if anyone has questions that are not covered by the webinar, they can email Matt at chair@in4blue.com. All right, I am delighted to introduce our presenter tonight. Kristen Self worked for the Indiana House Democratic Caucus for 12 years, holding positions from intern to finance director to campaign director. For 2 years, she has served as political director for the Missouri Democratic Party. In that capacity, she ran campaigns funded by Senator Claire McCaskill and successfully flipped 2 legislative seats. Democrats hadn't held in a generation. She came back to Indiana in 2016 when Christina Hale, who she had recruited to run for state representative, was John Gregg's running mate. She served as the finance director for Liz Watson's campaign for Congress in 2018 and managed the campaigns of the last 3 most competitive statewide campaigns for Jim Harper, Jonathan Weinzappel, and Destiny Wells. Kristen has a passion for flipping seats for Democrats and working with candidates, staffers, and volunteers to run the best campaigns possible. We are very fortunate to have her field experience for our training program. And Kristen, we welcome you this evening. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Keith, so much. Thanks, Matt. I'm so glad that you all are out there. Good evening, everybody. I will try to pace myself through this presentation. But like I said, like Matt said at the beginning, we'll make sure that we have plenty of time at the end for Q&A, and hopefully I'll answer a few of your questions, but might also get you kind of thinking about more as you kind of move forward into the campaigns. What a treat it is that we're getting started this early. This is truly an organization year, and the 4th Congressional District is kind of proving that. So I'm thrilled to be here tonight. So we'll go ahead and jump in and get started. We're going to talk about field directors and volunteer coordinators. Oftentimes those positions kind of end up being one, but we'll kind of run through these slides. There are 14 or 15 as I recall, so that'll just kind of give you a good pacing. So Keith, when you're ready, if you want to advance to the second slide. All right, so the field director on a political campaign is responsible for managing and executing the grassroots organizing strategy to mobilize voters and win elections. Like Matt said, this really is a crucial role on the campaign, one that's really important. It's kind of like the keystone. So you've got your candidate and your campaign manager, but that field director role, the volunteer coordinator, is really important to kind of making the engine of the campaign go. You're going to be building on directing the largest team on the campaign. And so that is like, sort of something to keep in mind as you move forward. You're going to be the person managing volunteers, managing the people who are going out and representing the campaign. So I included here on this slide a couple of photos. One is of my friend Emily Siren, who was elected mayor in Zionsville, and then also an example of a walk piece that you might want to take a look at as you're sort of working on campaigns in the future. Keith, if you want to advance the slide. So the first thing you should do if you and your candidate have not, oh, excuse me, sorry. I'm a little nervous, you guys, if I'm going to be really honest. I'll just throw that out there. Research past election results by precinct in the district. So I'm going to actually take the wheel here for just a second, Keith. You can actually find these results online. And I think you have to approve my request to share, Keith, if you can. If you can't, it's no big deal.
I just hit allow, so you should be all good.
Okay, great. All right. So hopefully you all can see my screen now. So I just went online and literally Googled Allen County, Indiana election board. Allen County is Fort Wayne. And you can actually find election results by precinct most of the time for most of the counties. They've gotten modern enough to put them on the Google on the web. So as you can see, you can kind of pull those up. And then a lot of times they'll have election results from different years. The one thing I will tell you is you want to look at election results that look like the election in which you're having a campaign. So if you're running in 2026, you don't necessarily want to you do want to look at 2024, but those aren't going to be comparative in terms of the number of people who are going to turn out, the share of the electorate that is going to come out. You want to look at the 2 years before that, so 4 years before an election, to kind of give you a like sort of a like base of what the election might look like. So if you're running in 2026, you would click on 2022 election results, and I'll just show you just ever so briefly what those results look like. If you're running countywide, you do still want to gather that information by precinct. This is just the countywide information, but this sheet does look like this. And what I usually do is I will collect the number of registered voters, the voter turnout, and then sort of pick a couple of elections that I can kind of compare, including the campaign that I'm running. So it's like if I were running a county sheriff's race, I would pull that sheriff's race from 4 years ago, but I might also choose the county prosecutor. I might choose a statewide race, et cetera, et cetera. But that's how you pull election results by precinct. And like I said, you'll want to do both an election that is in cycle with yours, as well as one, the previous election, because you're going to start to see some trends of what those election results might look like.
Kristen, so that didn't work. I let everyone know. We'll just share
Oh,
the link in the resources. So
oh yeah. Okay, great. Sorry, you guys. I was like, you must have just thought she's a crazy person. So you'll also want from that information, then you'll be able to take that and develop a plan for your voter contact. That will be include, sort of identifying what precincts are heavy Democrat. I still like to knock on those Democratic doors, particularly like in a primary, so that you can kind of get some people who let them know that the election is happening. Also let them, you can find a lot of volunteers. But then also you'll be able to identify those precincts that are heavily persuadable or that have some swing voters. All that information, when you collect those results by precinct and kind of put them into a table, will really make a lot of sense. And like Matt said, I'll send you an example that will hopefully kind of show you exactly what I'm looking at. I know it's a little bit of a foreign concept if you're not familiar with it. So you'll also set contact goals. So what you want to do with these election results is make a determination. You'll be able to kind of determine what was the voter turnout 4 years ago. So let's say it was 67%. That would be pretty high. But if it is, then when you pull this information from the van, you want to choose all of your registered voters, multiply it by 67%, and that's where you start to have an idea of what your win number will be. From that win number, then you go into figuring out who the people are who you're going to make contact with on the doors, and then also determining how many days you have to make contact with those voters. And I'm always like a big fan. Like this, one of the mantras I live by is that things that are measured get done. So making sure that you kind of set that goal, that you're checking in on it on a regular basis with your candidate and with your campaign manager is really crucial. And we'll talk just a second about the voter file. There will be a full training on the voter file, but I'll just take just a brief second to talk about that. So Keith, if you want to advance to the next slide, please. For some reason that one's blank. Okay, it's not coming up on my screen, but so there we go. Okay, there it is. So the voter file is an online system that is maintained by the national party, and our state party actually has a license for it, and then it licenses you. You can get access to it through your county party chairs. It's a dynamic system, so it has every registered voter that is in the district in which you're running. So it's like if you're running countywide, it's going to be for the county. If you're running for a mayor's office, it will just be those precincts in the mayor's district, like for state representative, for state senator, et cetera, et cetera. And there's all kinds of information about voters in the system, including their voting history, when they were registered, other people who are living in their household. And the system, like I said, is web-based. And it can be manipulated. So there will be some tools in the information that Matt sends out tomorrow. If you're not familiar with the van, that you can go online and actually kind of tinker around a little bit, see some tutorials about the voter file. But this just kind of gives you an idea of what the screen actually looks like when you log into Van. And just to get just a smidge deeper into it, when we target voters, we actually can target them not only using their voting history, but also what we think is their Democratic support score. And that support score is based on their past voting history, information about what neighborhood they live in, what their household value is. Way back in the day, it used to be whether you bought Colgate toothpaste or Crest toothpaste, if you had a Kroger card or a Hy-Vee card, all kinds of, there were thousands of consumer data points that informed voters' scores in the voter file. But the one thing I will say, and you will hear me say this again later in my presentation, that the information that is in Van is only as good as the information that has gone into Van. So if your voter file has not been used in your area, it might be a little rusty. I am a Boone County resident, and I managed Emily Styron's campaign for mayor in 2019. And we were really lucky that J.D. Ford had come before us and had run, but we had some really crazy scores in 2019 when I first started working on campaigns in Zionsville. And they've gotten so much better, but it's because we have really been working it with volunteers, and the information is much more accurate. Another thing is you can actually tag people in the van if they want a yard sign. You can develop and answer questions about whether they support your candidate. It's a pretty good tool. I was going to say it's really great. It's a pretty good tool. And like I said, only as good as the information that goes into it. Keith, will you advance to slide 5? So, the field director and the volunteer coordinator, your job is to build a volunteer network for the campaign. And at first, those are going to be a lot of friends and family and local supporters, local diehard supporters. And also make sure that those volunteers can carry a message for the candidate. Um, I can't tell you how many times, I've worked with, so I never send out a volunteer out on the doors until they've proven that they will follow through, and also until I'm comfortable that they can carry the message for the candidate. My notes tell me to tell you guys, and this is God's honest truth, you have to be a little bit weird to be the volunteer coordinator. You have to be sort of frank with people and let them know, like, hey, I need you to not wear that shirt that has a stain on it, or that Black Sabbath, like, those Black Sabbath sneakers or whatever. It's really like the job of the volunteer coordinator and the field director to be someone who kind of institutes a little bit of discipline on the campaigns and make sure that those volunteers are prepared and that they have the confidence and also the safety tools that they need to go out and knock on doors. Accompanying van is a tool called Minivan, and most of us now use that tool. It's an app that comes on your phone, that's sort of a companion to that screen I showed you just a second ago. Again, you're going to get so much training on this. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, just kind of grasp the concept of it, and then you'll learn more later. But that tool actually kind of shows in real time where you are. So it used to be that we would be like, make sure you're within eye shot of like your buddy. I don't want to find you in somebody's basement. Um, that's a good thing. But making sure that your volunteers are safe is really important. Keith, the next slide, please. This is my favorite one, actually. And the volunteer coordinator, especially, it's their job to kind of be the gratitude officer of the campaign. Volunteers come back to a place where they feel like they're contributing and where they're making a difference, and also where people feel grateful for them. And so making sure that a thank you card goes out either from the candidate or the field director or from someone, the volunteer coordinator, someone on the campaign follows up with those volunteers. They're going to come back again and again if you make them feel like what they're doing is important and don't kind of treat them like cattle. I also like to sometimes kind of surprise and delight people. So, maybe you leave a t-shirt on someone's doorstep from the campaign, or send them a bumper sticker, or do something just a little bit special. You can even highlight volunteers on your social media page. That's a great way to kind of get some messages out about the campaign to a little bit of a different audience. Okay, I think we can move to the next slide, Keith. So like I said earlier, measuring, making sure that you're staying on track. So once you've developed that field plan, which you'll do in consultation with your candidate and with your campaign manager, it's really important that you kind of keep track and make sure that you're still on track. So, it's like you'll kind of say, we need to knock on 89 doors every day to make our goal. We're going to knock on doors 5 days a week. We're now something like 500-ish days away from election day in 2026. That's a really long time. And it's like if we're not hitting our goals, we have plenty of time to readjust. And the difference between hitting 89 doors and 105 doors is not so much. But if we waited until next summer at this time and then realized, oh gosh, we're way off target from where we thought we were going to be, then that would make a really big difference. The other thing is, like I said, using that voter file, we have that tool. So using it is really important for the campaign, because ultimately what you're trying to do is you're trying to build a universe of supporters that then you can actually turn them out starting when early voting happens up to election day. So that van is a tool, the voter file is a tool, and you're building that field plan to kind of get you to that goal. I think we can advance to the next slide. Here's just another screenshot of the voter file. This was sort of a snippet of time on a campaign I worked on last year. It was actually, I think it's donors. of the doors that we knocked. I think this was like August and early September, maybe like a 5 week time span. But you can actually, I just wanted to show you all this so that you could see there are all sorts of ways that you can manipulate this data and you can pull it to see sort of what your progress is. Again, you'll get a training later, but just so you can kind of see what the screen looks like. Okay, to the next slide. So if your candidate hasn't done this yet, when you land in their world, my suggestion is to drive the district. Just to get a sense for what the boundaries are, what the neighborhoods might be, or the communities that are included in the community, in the district, excuse me. So I included on this slide here a map of Boone County. Again, you'll keep hearing me. I love my Boone County Dems. But one of the resources that Matt is going to send you is a place that I know where you can get a map of the district where you're running. So the state of Indiana actually provides a resource where they'll print giant wall maps for your district for only $5. And they're, like I said, like 36, they're really big, like wall maps. And that is always the first thing I do is get one of those maps and then drive the district because just having a sense for where the boundaries are, kind of what's going on in the community, you can get so much through a windshield, I promise. Um, then obviously you're going to take that information that you've developed from pulling those election results to identify target precincts using the data in consultation with your candidate or campaign manager. And then also allocate your resources strategically. So on Stoner's campaign in 2024, the district includes Hendricks County and Boone County. And like I mentioned to you earlier, we've been really working the Boone County part of it hard for a number of years. And we have an amazing volunteer network that has grown up over time. And Hendricks County is getting to that point too, but they started a few steps later than we did in Boone County. So when I joined Tiffany's campaign in early August last year, I told her we're going to kind of leave most of Boone County to our volunteers, and we're going to go live in Hendricks County, and that's exactly what we did. So we kind of allocated our resources strategically, identifying that we had some really great volunteers who could help us cover part of the district, but there were other parts that we needed to make sure. So that's just one example of a way that you can allocate your resources. The other thing I might suggest is identifying some community strengths. So I end up in Lake County quite a bit, which is up in Northwest Indiana, and we actually have city captains up there. So we might run a countywide campaign and we can actually identify for a small town someone who is just there to work on behalf of one single candidate because the precinct chairs or the county chairs, they have kind of a different role. It's like they should support you, don't get me wrong, but they have to focus on getting all things done for the Democratic Party. You might want to identify, your own city chair or even a neighborhood captain. So it's really great to walk into a neighborhood with someone who is well known and well liked in their own community. So I always talk about my own mom and dad. They live at the front of the neighborhood in the house that I grew up in. And they've lived there for about 37 years and have walked their neighborhood almost every single day. So they know everybody in the neighborhood, everyone knows them. They walk and they wave. And having someone like that who knows the neighborhood and can go and make introductions for you and your candidate is golden, trust me. So think about those kinds of resources. And again, I'm a visual person, so I really like to have that big wall map to be able to do that. But thinking through those resources, take time, write it down, put it on paper, get everybody's buy-in, really, really important. I think we can advance, Keith. Keith and Matt, will you give me feedback? Am I doing okay on pace? Am I going too quickly? I'm
So I
okay.
think everything's going just fine.
Okay, great. Sounds good. So I really like to freak candidates out and put up a countdown clock. They sell them on Amazon for like $15. And it's always fun to kind of keep everyone on track with a countdown calendar. But whatever you do, whether you have a physical counting down calendar in your office or you just work backwards on some sort of calendar, do that because that's how you allocate your time. And obviously, everything is about election day. But I always ask this question, and I wish that you all could respond back because I'd love to hear your input. But I always ask people, when is election day? And, so many people will say, oh, it's November 3rd or 6th or whatever day, whatever day it is this year. And that's not right. Election day, the first election day is the day when absentee ballots start to get mailed out, and that's actually the third week in September. Once a voter has a ballot in their hands and they have voted it and they have sent it back in, it is game over for your campaign. So you want to make sure that you have contacted that voter, that you've started to communicate with that voter, that you're kind of tracking who those voters are, we're all kind of habits of creatures of habit. And so, it's like you can actually track that information in the voter file to people who are likely to vote early, who have voted early in the past, etc. But this slide is ultimately about GOTV, so getting out the vote. The job of the field director and the volunteer coordinator is that crucial part of the campaign, which is GOTVing. So, like I said, when we're knocking on doors, we're trying to build a universe of people who support our campaign. And then the GOTV part of it is actually getting those people out to vote. And let me tell you, Tiffany Stoner was obsessive compulsive after Election Day to look and see the people who we had identified as being supporters, but who didn't vote. And she spent the period between Thanksgiving and Christmas calling those people who were her friends. And I kept saying, like, wait. Like, the election data isn't totally like caught up just yet. Like, hold the phone, don't do that. But you will get, when you get as close as we did, you sure will feel like you have to do that. But so you'll want to be contacting those people who have said that they are going to support your campaign 3 to 5 times. When you're talking with them on the door, people are much more likely to vote if you've talked through like developing a plan. When are they going to vote? Where did they vote? Who's going to go with them? What drive-through are they going to hit on the way home? I mean, whatever like whatever the examples are or whatever the specifics are to their trip, it's really important to make sure that you're talking that through with people. The other thing that a field director is going to be responsible for is tracking absentee ballot requests. So we have to send in a form or apply online to get an absentee ballot. And then those absentee ballot, that takes a few days, like because it's paperwork and it's a county office to get those ballots out the door. But all that information is actually tracked in the voter file. And if someone has an absentee ballot in their hands, you can see that through the voter file or by getting that information from the county clerk. My suggestion usually is to coordinate with your county chair so that you aren't sort of inundating the county clerk with requests. It's like if there are 20 candidates running for office, the county clerk might be like, get your act together, everybody, and call me back. But the county chair also might be able to just submit a list of names so that you get a daily list of the people who are sent an absentee ballot. And somebody with an absentee ballot is hot, hot, hot. You want to make sure that you make contact with that voter. So you'll be like having your candidate potentially talk to them, potentially knocking on their door, having volunteers call them on the phone, just to, put some last minute information about your candidate into their hands before they vote. Another role of the field director in GOTV is ensuring that there's staffing at early voting locations and on election day. So coordinating calls, knocks, reminding supporters to make sure to get out to vote. So there are a lot of counties around the state. We used to do this program in Marion County when I was first getting started that we called a 10-2-4 program. And this one might be even new to Matt. Maybe he's heard of this before, but it would actually be like your name. So think of a piece of paper, horizontal like this, and Matt's name would be here and in the middle and on the end. And we would actually go in 3 times during the day, and a volunteer would be sitting there. And it's like if Kristen, Matt, and Keith's name is on the list, and Keith voted before he went to work, but Kristen and Matt haven't shown up yet. So Keith's name would be totally crossed off the list. Then when we came around at 10 o'clock, we would actually pull those sheets. I'm not a dinosaur, you guys. I did have a rotary phone when I was like a little kid, but I'm not like that old. But we did do this with paper. Anyway, and so we would actually like take that list and take it back to headquarters with volunteers and have them call. And then if Matt came in at say Matt comes in on his lunch hour, then he would come off the list and only Kristen would be left. And we'd be still calling Kristen going, hey, polls are open until 6 o'clock. Now, all that information is done in the trustee voter file, and it gets uploaded on a regular basis by our state party. So, again, something for you to look forward to if you're not familiar with the voter file. Just a couple other things about GOTV. If you're working with your candidate and they don't have a primary coming up next year, my recommendation is for you to go ahead and still run a GOTV program rather than trying to learn it while you're really relying on it in October, November, excuse me. And you can kind of figure out like, hey, how many volunteers do we need? When do we need to make sure those yard signs get out to polling locations? Who's going to take coffee around to everybody? Oh, we didn't have like volunteers show up and we missed like 6 precincts, like all that kind of stuff. You can flesh it out in the primary when hopefully you don't have another Democrat running against you. And you can really figure out like what you need for the fall. Just going through my notes, you guys, to make sure I kind of covered everything I wanted to talk about here. Um,
While Kristen does that, I will say that I am a dinosaur, but I've never heard of the 10, 2, and 4.
oh, it
And
was it was fantastic.
yeah, and we didn't use rotary phones. We had burner phones like we were on the wire.
I'm watching that right now. It's fantastic. I like can't wait to get back to Omar and the gang and see what they're up to.
Yeah.
Well, 10-2-4 was it was actually a really great sort of system and like, very old school. And it's basically the equivalent of what we do now. We try to get through the universe at least twice on election day. And, I was speaking about my Boone County volunteers. They were total rock stars last year. And I think at about 10:30 on election day called me and said, who do you want us to call now? Because we're done already. And it was really fantastic. So if you have a team doing that, then you're like doing great. Okay, Keith, I think we're ready for the next slide. We're getting there, you guys. I feel like I've just been yapping away, so I can't wait for your questions. Um, so the field director and the volunteer coordinator really is kind of like directing the highway between the campaign manager and the candidate and what's happening, and what they're hearing at the door. There should be some collaboration. There should be collaboration of communication from the digital team, from any sort of paid communication your campaign might have. And your team who might not be out knocking on doors every day should be hearing kind of what you're hearing on the doors. So if there's a local issue that's coming up again and again, or something that people are talking about, it's like you need to make sure that that part of your job is to report that back to the campaign manager. There should be an open line of communication. They will welcome your input, trust me, and they need it. So, it's like if they're not out knocking on doors every day, they might not have kind of a feel for exactly what people are talking about when you're talking to them on the doors. Um, Another job for the field director is to help out with events. So in Boone County, we've done a lot of meet and greets. So it's hard to get people to knock on doors, but I'm a big believer in knocking on doors because it does still work. But you can often find people to host events either in their homes or maybe in a sort of neutral location where they might invite their friends and hear from a candidate from on an extended basis. So when Emily ran for mayor in Zionsville in 2019, that was actually a lot of what we did. We would have a hard time finding people at their doors, but we could get, 25 or 30 people in a living room on a Tuesday, and that was more people than we were going to be able to talk to. And our goal always was one, they could kind of hear from her long form, but two, that we would get a couple of other events on the schedule from that event. So it's really helpful. And so those are really important events to organize to make sure that they, invitations go out in a sort of timely way, things like that. Another thing you might do is set up surrogate visits. So these are some of my favorite surrogates on the screen right now. JD Ford, Andrea Hunley, Shelley Yoder, and Brandon Sackbun, who's the new mayor in Terre Haute. We have a wealth of talent, of younger talent in our party. Do not let anybody tell you otherwise. And they are anxious to help candidates and campaigns across the state. So, one, don't hesitate to reach out to people and ask them to come to your district to kind of give a little bit of visibility to your candidate. But when you do, if they say yes, which most of the time they will if they can get it on their schedule, making sure that everything is set up for so that when they come in, it's successful. You don't want to get into a position where you don't have, say, literature. We unfortunately had that happen when Shelley came to knock on some doors, and it was unfortunate. But making sure that all those details are really set up and taken care of so that you can take advantage of something like that. A visit like that on the campaign is really useful and is the job of a volunteer coordinator or a field director. Okay, next slide. Oh, this is like my favorite one. This is one of I could tell you guys stories all night, I promise. I like tell my friends all the time that like I should have been writing this down as I was going along. But some of it nobody would believe me. I even have a title like for my book. You can ask me offline about that someday. But this photo is of the guys at Operating Engineers Local 150. So they're the crazy people who go up into cranes and usually take their lunch in a lunch bucket and are up in the sky all day. And most of them have hands, I'm not kidding you, the size of pie plates. And they're mostly Republican, if I'm being honest as well. But they obviously care about safety, about working families, about issues important to organized labor. So in 2024, I managed Destiny Wells's campaign through the convention. And I had reached out to the guy who's the political director for the local 150 and said we were in town. And he said, well, actually, we have a union meeting tonight. Why don't you come by and say hi, and then we'll go have a beer afterwards. And so I thought, oh, it'll just be kind of a small group of people. Well, it was this huge room, and I'm not kidding you, it was totally packed. The hall, you actually walk in from the back. So there wasn't any parking in the parking lot at all. So I dropped Destiny at the door, and I go park the car and I'm walking in. And as I'm walking in, Destiny is like marching up to the front of the podium. And my friend Dave says, "Where's Kristen?" Like I was hoping I was going to see in front of all these people, which was very embarrassing, about as embarrassing as I feel tonight. But Destiny gave the best speech I've ever seen her give. It was like 60 seconds, and she had all these guys on their feet, because they realized that she had a message that resonated with them, and she was short, sweet, and to the point. But this is really what I hope you take away from my quirky story is the importance of building relationships with local leaders and with organizations. I especially care about organized labor. So I was a staffer when we went to Champaign, Illinois. Again, a story I can talk about with you someday. But organized labor, teachers, like-minded organizations, community groups, there are so many people in our communities who are really affected by politics now. And I think people are finally starting to wake up about that. And they're just waiting to be engaged by campaigns. And it's really our jobs to kind of put people in place so that they can actually help out on a campaign because this is kind of a foreign concept, you guys. We're a bunch of weirdos, like on a Monday night talking about, working on campaigns. Most people don't, think we're like purple unicorns when we talk to them about campaigns. But if you just give them the information to be able to plug in and be helpful, you're really like creating opportunities for all of us. And then, like I've said, recruiting those supporters, highlighting their support, it kind of amplifies the outreach of the campaign. So one quick story I didn't tell Matt or Keith, this one just came to my mind. So when I was in Missouri in 2014, the 2014 election, we had a candidate who was a really great candidate, and he actually had two little kids, and sometimes he would go out when it wasn't quite so hot, and he had one of those backpacks with like his like that his kid could kind of stand in, and he'd take her out knocking on doors. Well, he actually purchased coffee mugs, which I hate, like swag, and like I mean I love it, but I also like it can get so expensive and everybody wants something. But he had a coffee mug. He carried around a single coffee mug in his backpack every night. And when he met someone who was like, had a really compelling story or had a story that kind of fit into the narrative of his campaign, he would ask them if they would take a mug shot with him. And so he'd hold up his mug that said Ken Duvall for state representative and take a selfie with the voter and then post it on social media. And people came to, and then he'd tell like a little, quick story, like, this is Keith, and we were talking about, how Republicans aren't blah, 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 aren't supporting, aren't keeping our costs down or something like that. Anyway, people would come to his social media on a regular basis looking for those mugshots. So it's just really important. And it was like, and then we had people who were actually sharing, like they would see, like, oh, hey, I'm going to be a mugshot tonight, because we would explain it and have them sign a waiver so that they didn't come back and say they didn't want to be shown on the page. And then they would reshare it. And it was kind of like a really cool way for us to like share the campaign. So think about like your own mugshot. Or I don't know, take that idea, whatever. Like, I don't want to keep ideas away from people. Okay, Keith, I think I'm ready for the next slide. So required skills for being a field director and a volunteer coordinator. Treat this like a job description. Um, that experience with van, minivan, and mobilize, you can learn that. If you don't have that, don't let that sort of prevent you from taking on the role. Because there are tons of trainings, and now that we have Google and YouTube, the state party also maintains some training. There is also NDTC does a lot of trainings, and those will all be things that Matt will be sending out to you tomorrow. I know because I sent those to him. So don't get so hung up on that. But I think the next four are really important, that you have strong organizational and leadership skills. Like I said, that you're willing to kind of like put in the time to collect the data, to think through the campaign. What are we going to need? I probably should have also added that you kind of are, can adjust to campaigns too, and also that you have the leadership skills. Oh, I did. There we go. Strategic thinking and adaptability, making sure that you can kind of adapt to situations. Another mantra I live by is nobody died. And that is like, as long as nobody died, it's totally fixable. And it is not going to be the end of the world. So if you ever hear me say nobody died, we're okay. You're going to be okay. But just being able to, I think I would say that I've learned that from years of campaign crises. So just being able to adapt is really important. And then, of course, having those interpersonal communication skills, one being, grateful and kind to your volunteers, but also being firm, and being able to go out and talk to people, talk to strangers, but be able to communicate back to your campaign manager, your candidates, be able to kind of tell hard truths. All those are kind of things that are going to fall in this. And then, of course, the irregular hours. This is not a 9 to 5 gig. In fact, a lot of the field director and volunteer coordinator role is going to be kind of after hours. So, it's like your day might start a little later than the rest of the team, but you're going to go a little later as well, particularly if you're out knocking on doors with your candidate or with volunteers. Um, so I think that's time for the last slide, Keith. And the only thing I might say in closing is this occurred to me today again, kind of the way the world is right now. I've worked on campaigns for 25 years. You guys can do the math. I've not missed an election cycle in Indiana since 2000. I learn something new on every campaign, no matter how much I think I know, how much experience I have, some new curveball always comes along. I didn't do something different on the campaigns I won that I didn't do on the campaigns I lost. We live in Indiana. It's tough. It's tough to run, but it's important that we put ourselves out there. It's important that, for the ticket, it's like we might not win, but we might be able to pull some other campaigns along because we're all kind of doing the best we can and that we're out there talking to voters about the things that are important to them. So that's kind of my closing, you guys. Matt, I'll kick it back over to you and Keith.
Thank you, Kristen. If anyone has any questions, please put them in the Q&A and we will be more than happy to answer them.
Mm, mm.
Well, you may have done such a great job explaining they just
Hey.
don't have any questions. So I think we will, oh, there we go. A comment, great job. Thank you so much from Kathy Dale. I agree. We really, I got a message during this from an attendee who said, I cannot believe you got her to do this. And so,
That's awfully
um,
nice.
yeah, we are very lucky to have you, Kristen. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, you guys.
Well, seeing no questions, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. So again, let me thank Kristen for agreeing to do this. I think it was an excellent presentation on these two really important jobs. Oh, we do have a question. Can you talk about recruiting volunteers? That's a great question.
Yeah. So I assume the question is about kind of where do you recruit those volunteers? So that's why I think there's a couple places. One, it's like sort of your key crew is always going to be friends and family to start. It's like they're the first people who are going to be with you, and they're the last people who are going to be with you, and other people will come and go. I will say that it's like, you start a campaign and you just never know who you're going to meet, who's going to love you and love your candidate and just really work their tails off. You'll also be disappointed by people who you expect might help out on campaign and they don't. But finding those people, sometimes you can find them in your local party. Sometimes you find them when you're going out knocking on doors, especially with strong Democrats. So a lot of times, the rule of thumb when you're out knocking on doors is if someone says that they're going to support your candidate. So you always ask that question, right? Like, what issues are important to you? You flag that in the voter file. There'll be some choices. And then you say, are you planning to vote in the election? And then you ask, are you planning to support, the candidate? And if they say they're going to support the candidate, you keep asking questions until they say no. And so the next question is, will you take a yard sign? The next question is, will you volunteer on the campaign? And if they say yes to that, then you ask, will you donate to the campaign? Because it's like so you'll find people there. Some of those partner organizations, so teachers, organized labor, can be some really great places. And then that's why too, it's nice to have those meet and greets as well, because it's like people who have a little bit of an extended amount of time with your candidate. Um, so one of the tools that Matt is going to send out in the email tomorrow is a sign-in sheet. I like to please feel free to use it, copy it, make it your own, whatever you would like. But I always like to ask people if they would like to volunteer on the campaign. And you'll get a number of people, especially at meet and greets, who will, it's like if they're willing to invest an evening of their time in the candidate, it's likely that they're going to be willing to volunteer for the candidate too. One other thing, I've never found this to be an especially great tool. So I'm going to tell you guys this to hopefully avoid some time, but there is a volunteer score in the voter file. I have always found that it sucks. And and I've had a number of campaigns invest time in trying to call through people who have really high volunteer scores in the van. I think your time is better spent kind of identifying those people sort of organically. But just know that it's like when you first start out, it might just be you and your candidate and like a couple of people and someone they're related to or someone you're related to who are on the campaign, and that's okay and very normal. You will build people up over time. I hope that answered the question.
That was a great answer, Kristen. I will also say we got a a message from someone you might know, Erica Revercombe, who says that
Mhm.
most people overestimate how many volunteers they need.
Oh yeah.
I if you're running for, well, I mean, the last campaign I ran that was successful was a mayoral campaign almost 20 years ago, and I think that campaign had maybe 10 volunteers for a city of 18,000.
Yeah. I think that's totally like great note, Erica, and I totally agree with you, Matt. It is it's like if you're running for a local office, it's like you really just need a couple of people, honestly. And it's like, you do want some more people for election day, but it's like if you have, 6 to 10 regular volunteers on a campaign, like you're really lucky until you start to scale to a congressional campaign or a statewide campaign, and that's kind of a different story. I will say too, it's like these protests that have been happening. Those are also some great places to potentially find people. It's like if they're willing to go to protests or get involved in that way, it's like that's some potential as well for identifying some volunteers to kind of get out there too. And I don't know if our party, like our state party, has been doing much of that, but
Yeah, I'm not sure, honestly, be honest with you on that one. Okay, so we don't have any other questions, so I'm going to go ahead and we're going to wrap this up. Thank you again to Kristen. Just some closing thoughts. We've intended this to be more of a, as I've described it, as a 101. This is the more of the what you needs to know if you're looking to run, with some general strategy. Later on, over the winter, we'll come back. We will have additional series that will get into more of the hows and the importance and sort of the fine tunings of these sorts of jobs. But for now, what I will tell you is that our next session will be next Monday, August 25th. It will be fundraising, and you're not going to want to miss that one because it's not going to be on YouTube.
Mhm.
We have agreed because of some sensitivities around one of the presenter's jobs. We will not be making this available to the public outside of the webinar next Monday. So don't miss. All right. Thank you all. Have a great evening.
bye y'all. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Keith.